Hi, and welcome to the Chase and Care podcast. On today's episode, we're looking at something slightly different from the norm. We're going to be speaking to Stuart Whitman, who recently decided to take a franchise with one of our sponsors, Network Live-In Care. So what I thought we'd do today is get Stuart on because it's an interesting background to where he's come from, why he even thought about a franchise, and why he actually thought about live-in care as an option. Welcome to the show, Stuart Whitman.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
For our audience's sake, there are going to be, because I know there's over 80% of people that are in their jobs today, facts, I don't make these things up, over 80% have thought about starting their own business. And in fact, over 50% say that they will be probably starting a new business in the next 3 years. We've got the mindset. We know that people like working for themselves or think that they like working for themselves. We've got a real life version here of somebody that has actually taken that step. But before we talk about network live-in care and why you chose to look at the live-in care sector, let's help the audience understand who Stuart is and where you've come from. Paint us a picture.
Okay, so without going way back, I think if I go back to my days in a corporate recruiting business, a national chain of recruiters, I started off basically getting temporary drivers out to businesses. I built up relationships with businesses and the temps themselves, getting them out to, let's say, a local haulier wants a truck driver. So basically we would send the driver that suit the task to the company, or it might be a van driver or even car drivers. So I started working for this particular company back in 97, and then kind of went into an area role, and I found myself doing a bit of area management and also mentoring. And that's something I really enjoyed. I used to work on some national contracts as well. So I was traveling around the country doing all sorts. Then we had the financial crash in the late noughties, so I think 2008, 2009. And I'd created this kind of niche role that I was surplus to the business, should I say. And I found my way to eventually an MD's office with a discussion about redundancy, and one thing led to another, and I was made redundant. Never really considered self-employment or starting my own business until that point, because I was quite happy doing what I was doing. Paid holidays, bank holidays were paid, private healthcare, all these kind of things that come with a role.
You mentioned that you hadn't really thought about it, but had it in the back of your mind ever jumped to the forefront, say, I can run my own recruitment business?
Definitely. When I was in recruitment, you always look at the margins, and it is one of those businesses you don't have to buy in a machine to make a widget. So there's no initial outlay. All you need really is a phone, an application form, and I guess a bit of get up and go. And it was considered because I saw other people do it, but I was actually quite loyal to the brand. I'd been there. I ended up staying with that particular company for 12 years. Usually the biggest sticking point, I think, within starting up your own business, I've got friends who, interesting, you sort of mentioned about the stats and people that consider running their own business. I would say more than half of my friends probably run their own businesses. So it just goes to show, doesn't it, that some do, some don't. And I was one of those kind of do I, don't I? And then very much into opportunities as well. Sometimes you have opportunities that happen and then you make decisions based on those. But at the time, I really wasn't thinking about what I want to do. And then somebody that I know, they supply the carers to the care home, the supported living sites, nursing homes, and they were a very good business. So I've kind of considered getting into that a bit, but in what kind of role? And then one day they had a problem with a trainer, and there was a discussion basically, and I was having a discussion, and oh, what kind of training? How have you been let down? And it was actually first aid training, and that's why I was thinking, well, I've done first aid courses in the past. I know how to do first aid, so I kind of looked into, right, okay, so maybe if I did first aid training, that could be the start of something. Even if I didn't continue it as a business, it would be a skill that I could use. So why not? So I ended up doing a first aid course for the recruitment company. This recruitment business had customers that needed training. They had their own staff that needed training. So I was promoted on behalf of that business as part of their training arm, if that makes sense. So I ended up then doing first aid courses for that recruitment business's customers. We run open courses, and it was going really well. I also then started working, and this is the link with the living care, where I started working with Network Healthcare. I started doing training courses for them around the south of England. And this is where my getting out there and learning about the care industry really did develop. And it was mainly training temps that would go into care homes and nursing homes, but a lot of not living carers, but domiciliary carers that would go into somebody's home for half an hour or an hour or two for a call or for personal care or whatever it might be, whatever the need was. So I got to know the care industry really well. And then in 2015, I had a call from one of my customers in Dorset to say that there's a training company that is based in Devon who need trainers in my area, pretty much a radius of where I live in the New Forest. So I got in touch with them, and basically my own business took off.
Break that down a little bit. You were a recruiter, an area lead in a business with a car, salary, then you were let go. First of all, how did you feel at that point when you had lost control of your career?
It was probably about time. Been in the business long enough, feeling quite comfortable, taking things for granted maybe. You get your salary every month and you work with people that you like. And funny enough, I've got a friend who's just going through the same right now. He's just been made redundant less than a month ago. And it kind of poked the fire a little bit with regards, or the embers or whatever, how you feel as though you're not wanted, not needed, not required. Your experience isn't needed in our business anymore. So personally, I don't look back that much, but what he's going through, actually, I probably felt.
That loyalty thing, isn't it? We talk about that quite a lot, where companies are often not perceived as giving back the loyalty that you gave them. I felt the same on two occasions in my career, very frustrated that I thought I'd done everything right, that I'm giving them everything and they can't possibly live without me as being part of their business. But surprise, surprise, they're still there and I'm not.
I think, the interesting thing is where people are having conversations about you don't even know are happening. But I must admit, I think my time came because I kind of knew they were kind of looking for things for me to do rather than me going into an office on a regular basis or whatever. But I think it's one of those things. If you understand business, you're not the first person to be made redundant, are you? So it's just these things happen for whatever reason. But I think definitely you see them as an opportunity. They should be seen as an opportunity. And like I say, with my friend at the moment, I think it's the unknown. It's the not knowing where you're going to be in maybe 3 months' time or 2 months' time or however much time you have before it really does affect you, where you need to start earning again. And you could easily jump into the wrong thing, I think, as well. What I did was very much gradual, and thankfully I had support from others as well during the time. But it wasn't that bad. But yeah, most definitely, it's not nice to be not thought as part of the business, and everybody else moves on, don't they?
Yeah, I think after a period of time, you can reflect back.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
it sounds to me as if you thoroughly enjoyed your time working for the organisation. So it wasn't a
Mm,
case of you didn't enjoy being there. A lot
no.
of people remain in companies just to take the money rather than enjoying a day job. We're looking at your experience based upon the fact that you were made redundant, which is a different story from those people that have decided that they want to leave and start up their own business and they've got a plan. What I'm hearing, I think I'm right in saying that you didn't have a plan. You hadn't planned to be made redundant, so you didn't know what
No.
to do. How scary did that feel at the time when you didn't know what the hell was happening next?
Do you know, I really can't remember. But the only thing I can, and again, maybe that shows that it wasn't that much of an issue. I honestly don't. But again, living it through my friend at the moment, I must have had those kind of feelings.
It was interesting when we were talking about leaving your organization. You were looking for a job. You were looking for a job, but you've
Mm.
ended up not having a job, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
how did that twist really happen?
yeah. It's,
And
what do you mean? Because it's a business and not a.
well, yeah, it's not a job. You don't, nobody's paying you PAYE, are they now? But
No.
you seem very happy in not having a PAYE job.
I think the biggest worry that I had, to be perfectly honest with you, was I was always looking ahead of my diary. If I was to look at August now, it's probably the worst month for me for training, because nobody wants to train while there's holidays going on and cover needed in care homes and nursing homes. So that's my worst month. I wouldn't have known that at the beginning. You find those kind of things out because there isn't anybody in an office telling you, look, you need to plan for August because it's a quiet month. And this is one of the reasons why the live-in care thing fits in with this business really well, because I do still have day, a bit like today, really. I've got lots to do because it's a day that I haven't got training to do. So those days where I don't have a booking, I'll fill with work. Like now, it's now investing my time in the live-in care business. So this fits in perfectly with what I do, because I will get days where I'm not booked.
Let's explore that a little bit further, if I may. You
So,
currently are a trainer and you actually do work within the care sector. And that gives you some free time, as you said, to explore other options. You've mentioned now about looking at live-in care as an income stream. How did you get to that decision in terms of why live-in care? People probably listening in don't actually understand what live-in care is, to be fair. They know what a care home is. They maybe know what domiciliary care is. But how do you find yourself with a network live-in care franchise?
yeah, interesting question. And again, it's through, I guess, a bit of marketing and a bit of word of mouth. I never really even considered the concept. One of the things I have considered as I've developed as a trainer and knowing more about the industry, I've often thought, God, I'd really like to be a manager and manage a care home. But then I think, actually, one thing I really enjoy about my work is I'll go somewhere, deliver the information, we'll reflect on the way home or, at different points about the training session, and maybe do some more work on myself or with that business as a result of the training course. However, I'm not having to deal with people. I don't have to manage people, which I quite enjoy now that I don't have that responsibility. I actually, really used to enjoy having a team around me, kind of thing, and you'd have the fun in the office and everything else. And I still have that kind of relationship with some of the people that I work with, because I work with some homes on an extremely regular um, basis. So I'll go two of the homes I go twice a month. So I get to know the teams really well, and I do feel as though I'm an extension of their team. So it's almost like working with the same group. I also like that, not having to manage people, not getting involved in disciplinaries, not having to recruit people, not having to fill shifts or deal with rotas. the only person I need to worry about myself, worry about myself. As long as I'm fit and healthy, then that's great. So with regards to the kind of live-in care bit, I have often thought about, like, as I said, managing a home, which doesn't really suit because it would mean that I'd be employed. I actually wouldn't want to be employed anymore, which is going against the grain. But that's because I can manage my diary, and I know where I'm at. However, the living care thing I never really considered because I just thought it was an extension of domiciliary care. I assumed that a lot of domiciliary care companies would supply a live-in carer. And also, if I'm doing that, then why don't I just explore maybe opening up or starting a domiciliary care franchise business or whatever? But it's getting back to that recruiting bit as well. Do I want to spend time recruiting people? Have people maybe staff having to do rotas again and responsibilities? It's almost going back to the management bit that I don't really want to do. So I saw something on LinkedIn on Network, and it was yourself, wasn't that? I think that posted the link to have you considered being starting a franchise for live-in care, which then basically opened up the whole, I don't know, there's layers of an onion or whatever you want to say, just opened up the door of opportunity, I guess. And there's me talking about opportunities just a few moments ago. So maybe that was a, opportunity that was knocking, and just by way of putting in a request for information. I remember, I think did I send you an email? Or somebody sent an email to Network. That's right. Yeah, so I sent an email to Network, and then got a response back, and immediately a conversation, I think an hour, just to go through the sort of basics of running a live-in care franchise. And then had some time to think about that. And does it fit in with what I want to do? And does it fit in with what I do, which is my training company? And I did have a couple of reservations, and one of them was, am I now working as the enemy to the care and nursing homes? Because would I be encouraging people to stay at home? I had a real kind of, well, I don't know. So I had a few hours to think about it. Then I spoke to Network again, and we discussed a few of those things. And obviously, as you ponder things over a few hours, you have a few more questions. And also, was I the right fit for them as well? Because clearly Network wouldn't want to choose somebody that was just desperate to join a franchise, but maybe not genuinely want. I don't know. I can't speak for the Network, but I felt as though the fit was right. I'd worked with them before doing some training many years ago, and felt as though they were a reputable, decent company to work for. And although I'm not actually working for them, I'm working with them. And I'm quite comfortable with that, having that reputation behind me and having a national network behind me as well really does kind of give you the confidence to promote live-in care. Going back to is it against what I do because I train carers in care homes and nursing homes? I put it to an area manager actually, and I know her really well, and I said, I'm considering doing this. What do you think?
What were you expecting the answer to be?
Was actually I didn't know, but I know her enough. One thing leads to another. Anyway, so I basically asked her, and she said, "Oh, yeah, that'd be a really good idea." And I said, "All right, why is that?" And she said, "Well, because sometimes we go and do an assessment for somebody that wants to come into a care home or thinks they need to come into a care home." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Sometimes we don't take them on because they wouldn't be suitable for the home. They want one-to-one care. They stated in the assessment that this is a last resort. They say this is a last resort, so we've had to opt for a care home." And the wife might say to her that, we've been together for 50, 60 years, and now we're going to be split up. And then, so this manager said, so now I've got an option. I said, what do you mean? What's your option? She said, well, I can give you a call. And you can come and see them. And it might be better that they have a live-in carer. And I never really thought that that would be a thing, that actually we could work together. So,
Why do you think care home is saying that to you, that they've got an option? Is it for their business benefit, really?
it builds up our relationship. I don't know. It's not a benefit for their business, is it? But it might be later on.
Mm.
When care needs become, I don't know. It might be nursing. I have no clue, but I just think she just gave me an honest assessment. And I think, doesn't that show another side of the care home where they're not hooking somebody in to their business, but they've actually offered a solution, which is something that, being a quality care assessor,
Yeah.
the kind of thing I'll be looking at. And again, it'd be one of those. If you've got somebody that's really not suitable for a live-in carer, why would I say, yes, let's get a live-in carer in, and it'd be absolutely unsuitable? It's not good for the carer or the customer, is it?
No, and at the end of the day, network living care and also the care home that you're talking about, they are regulated by the Care Quality Commission, and we're there to provide person-centred care, which is the right care for the individual. So we should be doing the right thing and I think most providers do, to be fair. What I find quite curious, though, and I wonder whether or not, let's talk about that couple. You're right, being together for 50 years, you don't want to be split up. They've approached the care home. Do you feel that might be because that's all they know? This is what happens when we need care. We go to a care home. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, I think so. I think partly down to, again, this is my lack of knowledge, from a few months ago, I guess, where I would have not really thought about live-in carers or live-in care, and I would have considered it maybe to be cost prohibitive, where it would cost an absolute fortune to have somebody living in your house 24 hours a day. Well, apart from the bit of respite that the carer does get. I would have thought it would have been a massive cost, but in fact, it's not much more. If not, it could be cheaper than a care home or a nursing home, cost-wise.
It's absolutely on par, and I'll jump in just to say that. So it's definitely on par. And for couples, it can be cheaper to have a living carer, because when you go into a care home, you tend to pay the same price for each individual, whereas for living care, you're paying a combined price staying in your own home.
Absolutely.
So, it does frustrate, I think, many of us that talk about living care, that probably people don't know enough about it.
It's an interesting thing, and this is my job to try and promote it. Certainly in the New Forest, there's a huge catchment. There's a lot of people, demographic of the New Forest. Certainly in some of the towns, there's a lot of older people, because it's on the south coast. It attracts people to the area, so there's plenty of people to attract, or even just get the message out there. We're not doing 80 sales techniques where we're knocking on people's doors because we know they're really old and trying to sort of get them into the live-in carer kind of thing. It's just getting the message out there, isn't it? And giving people that consideration that it might be a thing. It might be families that are worried about mum and dad at the moment, or mum or dad, or both, having those really, really tough conversations, about their parent. And then when it comes to it, they're not knowing all the options. They're just thinking, it's the whole thing, isn't it? I think care homes have this stigma, which is really frustrating from somebody that works in the care system trying to get it better. The stigma attached to care homes and nursing homes is that they're bad places to be. What documentaries do we see? What newsreels do we see? Online, they're bad care. You don't get the good care, do you? There's one home that I work at in the New Forest. They've got a Facebook page, and they're forever doing things every single day. They're doing activities with their residents that goes on their Facebook page. the local news don't report it because it's good, isn't it? And so, I think the stigma attached is unfair, but with people that won't kind of let that stigma go, maybe live-in care is the option. And they don't even know it's there. So again, my job to put it out there.
What sort of things do you perceive that will help educate people in the local community?
I think even conversation. I had a chat with somebody in the local town recently, sat next to her on a coffee table sort of thing. Just as you do, just watching the world go by. And one thing led to another, and she was telling me she was on her way to go and visit her husband. And this lady happens to be 96, the one I was talking to. No, 94, sorry. 94, and she's on her way to go to see her husband in a local nursing home. And I think that she said, because when I told her that I do the care, care training, she kind of said, "Oh, I don't think the home that my husband's in has very good training." So there for me was an opportunity anyway. But I said, "In what way?" She said, "Well, they just don't look after him." "How do you know they don't look after him?" And she said, "Well, he's always, no matter what day or what time I go there, he's always in the lounge, sat in his wheelchair. The TV room, sat in his wheelchair. He doesn't have mental capacity, but he is always there." And it really intrigued me because it was like, well, okay, so why is he there if you're not happy with it? She said, because it's convenient. It's literally a 10-minute walk from where we are. She said, my house or our house is 10 minutes walk away from here. I have a coffee here just to, kind of take the weight off my legs a bit and just have a sit down before I go to the home. And she actually said, that she had had many conversations with staff there, and they will always say, this is where he wants to be. So she has to kind of trust them. But when I sort of explained to her that I was doing live-in care, she actually asked my number and said, well, I'm 94, my husband's 96. He's not going to be around forever. She said, I'm going to tell my son that I don't want to be in that home, that I would rather be in my own home, having somebody look after me.
And I think there's a fair degree of guilt. I don't know if you picked that up in conversations with families. I was listening to somebody the other day that was talking about how we've changed as a society. The family always used to look after mum and dad as they became elderly, but because people are living so far away from the family home these days, they look at the option, and the option tends to be, well, we'll stick mum in a care home because I can't look after them. They always feel guilty about the fact that they did that. From my experience in the industry, I hear far more people say, I wish I knew about live-in care, as my husband or my wife is in a care home. Or we had an example recently where a package is being taken on where the daughter of a 96-year-old mother has said, if she goes into a care home, I worry it will kill her. So live-in care is the only option.
But then that's the stigma attached, isn't it? It's a different kind of care, isn't it? It's shared care in a care home. You've only got 3 or 4 carers, maybe. If one's busy with doing the medication, you've got somebody else doing this and somebody else dealing with that. The worry is that your family member may not be having their care needs met, whereas within living care, you've got that carer there all the time that knows the person, that knows the family. The family can drop in at any time. They don't have to make appointments. All of these things are really important to families that may feel guilty about putting them into a care home. Definitely.
Your role as a quality care advisor means what? Do you have an office? Do you have care staff? What happens?
No, the staff are recruited by network. My role is to promote the business within the community that is in my territory, and then follow up inquiries or leads or whatever you want to call them, and then go into that particular house or that setting with an open mind. But let's bear in mind, this could be somebody that's actually in a care home that wants to come home and have a live-in carer. So it could be in any kind of setting, really, promoting the benefit of live-in care. And that's kind of my role as far as promoting it, not hard selling. Obviously it's a business opportunity, but if it's not the right one, remember the word quality care assessor, for me as a role, and I take it seriously. It's one of those where I need to assess. As I said earlier, it wouldn't be very good if the person in their own home is, let's say, walking around, climbing the walls, kicking the doors, or whatever, because they're unfortunately, they've developed dementia to a point where this could be the worst place for a living carer to work. They would need to be referred somewhere else. So living care isn't the definite way to care for somebody. It's about meeting their needs. You mentioned 3 words earlier, which is vital in this industry, which is person-centered care. Lots of care teams know about it. They know what it is. It goes away from the institutionalized care that we used to have, where everybody was bathed and showered at the same time, woken up at the same time. This is very much live-in care, and modern care homes are now very much tailored to what the needs are of the person that's receiving the care. If you've got Doris and Fred sat next to each other, they may have different levels of dementia. One may be onset, one may be fully diagnosed. They may have different behaviours, and both of those need looking at on an individual basis rather than they're just 2 people with dementia. My role would be then assessing, and is it right, is it not? And if it is, great, then we can have a conversation and we can develop that. So that's my role, is to assess. Once we're happy, or once I'm happy and the questions have been answered and the potential customer's happy, and then we move it on a step. And then we'll start the process of, getting the carer in there as soon as possible.
Flexibility, that's always cool, I think, when you're talking to families. Because if it is too rigid, that might well just turn them off in the first place, and don't feel as if the empathy's been built with them, because this is very personal. Often a bit of a firefight situation when they think that mum or dad needs care. Talking to people like you is probably the last thing they thought they might be doing on a Monday or a Tuesday.
Yeah, it's the reality, isn't it? It's the reality of life, and this is a sort of thing most people. I mean, you spoke earlier about how we used to care for our older people. I work with a lot of people from different cultures and different countries, and they do still look after their mums, their nans, their granddads, their dads, or whoever. And it's the culture, our culture, unfortunately, in this country. I feel personally that most homes, you've got 2 people working because we have to, because of the cost of living and everything else. That we haven't got room either to house. Not many people would buy a house with a spare bedroom with a look at, oh yeah, mum or dad might live with us in the future. I don't think, anyway, the people that I know. And again, most of the people that I know wouldn't want their mum or dad living with them, and vice versa. The mum or dad don't want to live in their children's home. So what's ideal? When I've had conversations with people, where, again, a guy that I know that I'm having conversations with, his dad has run a successful business over the years. He loves his wife dearly. He's retired, and the son's taken on the business. And there was a conversation I had with the son, and he said, Dad won't let mum go into a care home. She's got dementia, she's falling. And I said to him, well, what about live-in care? He said, what do you mean? Well, yeah, you have a carer live in. All right. Does that happen? He didn't even know. So, we're having a conversation, and hopefully that will develop.
There's a lot to talk about and unravel for people in the community that don't understand live-in care as an option. And there there's a number of podcasts on the Chasing Care podcast series that touch on it, and a number of things jump out, and it's really not. You need to have a massive house. It can be a 2-bedroom flat as long as there is a spare room for the living carer. So people need to get away from the idea that only the rich and famous with loads of grounds can actually have a living carer. That's frankly not true.
Yeah. Never conversation with a friend that I went to school with. His mum and dad are much older than my mum and dad, and I haven't seen him for a while, and they don't need care yet. They're still driving about, bothering him. They're still coming over to his place, but he's even said, that would be ideal for my mum and dad because they could live downstairs. They got enough room downstairs, and the carer could. He's actually thinking about the positivity for the carer. He's actually wanting to attract somebody. So these people, once you open up their mind, they actually find the solution for you as well. So,
yeah, a lot of messaging to get out there for sure. And one of the final things that I'm sort of bigging up living care. Well, that's only because I have a passion for it. But one of the big things is that you do get that one-to-one companionship and friendship, and you really, I've seen it. You build that bond between the living carer and the service user, something that you just cannot replicate in any way, shape, or form within a residential care home.
No, definitely. And both have benefits, don't they? In reality, both have a place, otherwise they wouldn't be there in the industry. And this is probably one of the reasons why I've got into this is because I'm feeling it could be the next big thing in care. Providing we can supply the carers, this is a solution that seems quite simple. The family don't have to move out. The children, the grown-up children and their children, so the grandchildren, and even the great-great-grandchildren, just turn up and see mum or dad or both. It doesn't matter. There's no, whereas, yes, a care home might be a few miles away or even further. And, where's the privacy? Yes, they have their rooms, but when you're in your own home receiving your care, the carer actually can just leave them to it, providing the customer's safe, leave them to it, and maybe go up to their room or in another room or go out for a couple of hours. And, what's not to like about that? It's keeping the family together. That Sunday lunchtime when they're having a Sunday roast, that might be the time when the carer gets their respite whilst the family are doing what they used to do. Would they do that in a care home? Absolutely not.
Two things jump into my head. One, the first thing that jumps into my head is I've always thought, maybe wrong, that a residential care home is a bit like a hospital, that you've only got certain visiting times. But then conversely, on the other side of the fence, I quite like the idea of being in a nursing home because then I can't have my kids just drop in when they want.
Exactly. So it depends on again, that's meeting the needs, isn't it? This is the person-centered care. The good thing about, care homes are a lot more flexible now. They'll have visitors anytime, generally, the ones that I know. But I think as well, on that one, unfortunately, that could be something that would need to be managed, wouldn't it? Like when they actually ask the carer to lock the doors at 10 p.m. or 8 p.m. so the kids don't turn up or whatever. It might even be that the carer is the intermediary between, the carer would recognise as well the fact dad gets overtired and maybe gets a bit grumpy because they've been there too long or the children have been too loud. So the carer would be that experience to recognise that actually, your dad's struggling a bit, whereas, that wouldn't happen if it was mum just looking after or dad just looking after or whatever. And another one as well, I just thought about with that conversation with the guy that runs the business with dad now, is the dad doesn't want to be a carer. He doesn't want to do personal care on his wife that might have had an accident. He doesn't want that. He never, when he got married, it wasn't, till death do us part and I'll clean you up when you've, you've had an accident. And so there is that part to it where he's fortunate enough to kind of recognize that this could be an option for him in the future, where if it does get to that, he will just get a carer in for it. What's the better option? Maybe it could be a living carer that she's getting to know and maybe build some confidence with, which would then kind of perpetuate into even potential longer life, living life longer because she's happy. We all know how we are when we're happy, kind of still loving life, but when we're not happy, we're not loving it so much, are we?
Perfectly said. In the Japanese word ikigai, a reason to wake up in the morning and
Indeed.
do things.
Yeah.
Stuart, it's been amazing. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation as ever, just touching on the tip of the iceberg when it comes down to. So, why don't you tell people if they're around the New Forest, Hampshire area, or they're interested to find out a little bit more about living care, how do they find you?
They find me on the network. If you Google Network Living Care New Forest, you'll find us, I'm sure.
Yeah, and also in the link below or above, I'll put the telephone number and the contact information. Stuart, thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.
Well, thank you.